Lieutenant Richard Bong's P-38 Lightning convulsed in midair, as 20mm cannon shells ripped through the left engine cowling, tearing metal apart with brutal force. At 18,000 feet above the Solomon Islands, he was completely alone, his wingman already spiraling downward toward the Pacific, trailing a ribbon of oily black smoke. The August sun burned through the canopy glass, blinding and merciless, as Bong hurled the twin-boomed fighter into yet another frantic banking turn. Behind him, the Japanese Zero followed with eerie ease, matching every movement without strain, closing the gap with the calm patience of a predator. Bong had trained at America's finest fighter schools, memorizing every defensive maneuver ever written into a manual. Barrel rolls, split-S dives, chandelles, scissors, he had tried them all in the last 90 seconds. Each time, the Zero countered smoothly, almost casually. Now the enemy fighter sat less than 200 yards behind him, perfectly aligned at his exposed 6 o'clock position. The guns were steady, the angle flawless, the killing burst seconds away from sending Bong into the sea beside his wingman. His instrument panel screamed chaos. Oil pressure on the damaged engine was collapsing, airspeed was bleeding away, altitude was unwinding with terrifying speed. Gravity and battle damage worked together, tightening the trap. In perhaps 10 more seconds, the Zero's cannons would finish the job, and Richard Bong would become another number in the unforgiving mathematics of Pacific air combat. With death filling his canopy and no options left in the fighter pilot's playbook, Bong made a choice every instructor had warned would kill him instantly. He rolled the P-38 completely inverted, wheels pointing toward the sky, and slammed the control stick forward with violent force. The Lightning's nose dropped, plunging toward the ocean in a screaming vertical dive. But this was no ordinary dive. Bong was falling upside down, blood rushing into his skull so fast that his vision turned crimson, the world dissolving into a red haze. For 2 endless seconds, he flew blind through negative G-forces no manual said the aircraft could survive. The twin Allison engines howled in protest, loose gear and spent casings floated upward and smashed into the canopy, and his oxygen mask strained against his face. Every vessel in his eyes felt ready to burst. When he finally rolled upright at 12,000 feet, after dropping 6,000 feet in moments, the Zero was gone. Not damaged, not retreating, but vanished entirely, as if it had never existed. Bong circled cautiously, scanning every slice of sky, finding nothing. What he did not yet understand, gasping for breath and wiping blood from his eyes, was that he had just stumbled onto a maneuver that would reshape the Pacific Air War. A desperate, reckless-looking act, born of terror, that would shatter the Zero's reign and help turn the tide of the conflict. Within months, what began as one pilot's instinctive gamble would spread quietly across airfields from Guadalcanal to the Philippines. This is the story of how American pilots learned to fly upside down to survive, and how that discovery transformed the most feared fighter in the Pacific from an unstoppable killer into a vulnerable target. It is a story of innovation born from desperation, and of physics proving stronger than reputation. To understand why Bong's accidental breakthrough mattered so much, you first need to grasp how completely the Japanese Zero dominated the skies in 1942 and early 1943. When American pilots first encountered the Mitsubishi A6M0 in combat, disbelief rippled through their squadrons. The aircraft shattered every assumption U.S. intelligence had made about Japanese capabilities. The Zero turned inside every Allied fighter with contemptuous ease. It climbed faster, flew farther, and operated higher than anything America had in the air. Over the Philippines, Wake Island, and the Dutch East Indies, Japanese pilots achieved kill ratios that bordered on the unbelievable. For every 3 Zeros lost, the Allies lost 9, sometimes even more. The aircraft itself was a triumph of lightweight design. Engineer Jiro Horikoshi built a fighter weighing just 3,700 pounds empty, compared to over 5,000 for American planes like the P-40 Warhawk. That weight came at a cost. The Zero carried no armor for its pilot, no self-sealing fuel tanks, and an airframe built to minimal stress limits. In dogfighting performance, those sacrifices paid off brutally. The Zero could complete a full 360-degree turn in under 16 seconds. AP-40 needed 23. In aerial combat, 7 seconds might as well be an eternity. Every time an American tried to turn with a Zero, the Japanese pilot ended up behind him, guns aligned for an effortless kill. American pilots were dying because they were fighting on the Zero's terms. Fighter doctrine still echoed World War I, emphasizing turning battles and tight maneuvering. Against German aircraft in Europe, that approach worked. In the Pacific, it was fatal. Lieutenant Commander John Thatch watched pilots die during mock fights against captured Zeros, and he became obsessed with finding an answer. He realized that while the Zero turned better than anything else in the sky, its extreme lightness created weaknesses that could be exploited. American fighters were heavier, faster in level flight, and vastly superior in dives. Aircraft like the P-38 Lightning, the P-47 Thunderbolt, and the F-4U Corsair had powerful engines, rugged frames, armored cockpits, and fuel systems that tolerated violent maneuvering. Thatch developed the defensive weave, which saved lives, but offered no way to dominate the Zero. That solution would come from desperation, not theory. The encounter that changed everything occurred on April 7, 1943, over the Russell Islands. Major Thomas Lynch of the 39th Fighter Squadron found himself alone at 20,000 feet, ambushed by 8 Zeros. Separated from his wingmen, escape seemed impossible. Lynch knew turning meant death, and running level would fail before speed could build. In a moment of clarity, he rolled inverted and shoved the stick forward. The world flipped, negative G forces crushed him, and the P-38 plunged downward. The Zeros tried to follow, and they failed. Their airframes shuddered under negative G stress, fuel starved the carburetors, and engines sputtered or quit altogether. Lynch recovered at 12,000 feet, Zoom climbed back up, and attacked from above. 1 Zero disintegrated under his guns. He landed alive, eyes blood-red, face speckled with burst capillaries, head splitting with pain. But he had discovered the truth. The Zero could not follow inverted dives. The physics were simple. Negative G forces pushed blood into the head, punishing but survivable for trained pilots. The Zero's fuel system, however, could not function upside down. American fuel-injected engines could. The tactic spread by word of mouth. If a Zero gets behind you, don't turn, veterans whispered. Roll inverted, dive, then come back from above. Pilots gave it many names, but the effect was always the same. Captain Robert de Haven used it in July 1943, scoring his first kill near New Georgia. He would score 13 more using the same method. Flight surgeons recorded headaches, red eyes, and brief blackouts, but no one discouraged the maneuver. The alternative was death. The inverted dive flipped the entire tactical equation. The hunted became the hunter. Japanese pilots were completely unprepared. Their training emphasized turning superiority, not negative G flight. Even Ace Saburo Sakai described lining up what should have been easy kills, only to watch American fighters vanish downward, his engine sputtering when he tried to follow. By late 1943, American commanders were teaching the tactic openly. Colonel Neil Kirby told his pilots bluntly, "If you turn with a Zero, you die. If you try to climb with one, you die. Roll inverted, dive, and use your speed if you want to live." The P-38 excelled at the maneuver, its twin-boom silhouette becoming a warning sign in the sky. Pilots like Thomas Maguire used it mercilessly over the Philippines in 1944. In one fight, a pursuing Zero tore itself apart under negative G stress, never hit by a single bullet. Corsairs and Thunderbolts adopted the tactic as well, their weight becoming an asset in high-speed dives. By 1944, kill ratios had completely reversed. The Zero, once supreme, had become fragile prey. Japan rushed new fighters into service, but too late and in too few numbers. Worse still, experienced pilots were gone, replaced by barely trained novices. They faced American veterans who knew exactly how to exploit every weakness. Richard Bong refined the inverted dive into an art, scoring 40 victories and becoming America's top ace. His gun camera footage became legendary. The tactic reshaped air combat far beyond World War II. The Split S entered training doctrine, influencing Korea, Vietnam, and even the founding of Top Gun. Speed, energy, and refusing to fight on the enemy's terms became timeless lessons. Thomas Lynch did not survive the war. He was killed by ground fire in March 1944, pressing an attack he believed in. He was 27 years old. Today, a restored P-38 sits in a museum, bearing Bong's markings. Nearby, Japanese Zeros rest as artifacts, elegant and deadly, yet fragile in hindsight. The lesson remains clear. Sometimes history turns not on new weapons, but on one person desperate enough to break the rules. Richard Bong did that in August 1943. He survived, and in surviving, he handed his fellow pilots the key to victory. The Zero did not change. The aircraft did not change. The thinking did. The Japanese Zero was unstoppable, until one American pilot learned to fly upside down when every instinct said he would die. Sometimes, that is all it takes to change history.